iPod Touch 5th generation with a cracked screen. And I've already put a screen protector over it to keep any glass from falling out. There's some adhesive under the screen on either side of the home button, so I'm going to use a hair dryer to warm that up, just enough till it's warm to the touch but not too hot, or you may damage it. Next I'm going to use this tool to carefully get underneath the screen and slowly pry it up away from the frame. Once you have the screen lifted up, do not completely remove it because there's several wires we need to disconnect. As you can see, this screen was quite damaged and it's coming apart in pieces. Make sure you have all the glass removed from the adhesive area. Now you should be able to carefully lift the display and set it flat on the table. If the home button did not come off with the screen, you can remove that and set it aside. That'll have to be put back in later. Next I'm going to carefully pry up the home button switch. Next I'm going to remove two small screws on this end. There'll be one here and one up here. Now I'm going to remove 9 1.6 millimeter screws. There's 3 here, 3 located here, 2 here, and 1 up here. And then there's one more 2.3 millimeter Phillips screw, and that's located right there. Now I should be able to remove this plate, but as you're removing it, this home button switch, you have to lift up, and there's a little opening here in the plate. Make sure you slide that through there, being careful not to tear it. Next I'm going to remove the 3 screws that hold in the logic board. Be this one, and this one, and the third one is here. And these are 1.6 millimeter Phillips screws. Next, I want to remove the battery. There is adhesive all around the battery holding in place. So I'm going to use the hair dryer again to heat the back side of the iPod. Do not heat the battery. Do not get it very hot, just warm enough to release the adhesive. And then there's these slots here where you can get your prying tool in there and carefully pry up a little bit of the battery at a time until it comes loose. Once the battery is loose, you want to carefully unfold it because it's connected here. And I'm just going to lay it down flat on the table. This is the front-facing camera. I'm going to carefully pry it away from the screen. There's a little piece of black tape covering the screw on the headphone jack. I'm just going to lift that tape up so I can get to the screw. And now I'm going to remove these 3 screws. Next, I'm going to remove these 2 screws. And then carefully pry the speaker up from the case. Do not remove it, just pry it up slightly. This is the lightning cable that's attached to all this. I'm going to carefully lift that out of the case so we can flip the entire display over. And now we should be able to flip all this over and get to the back of the logic board. This is where the digitizer cable connects. So I want to carefully pry that up. And just flip that over. Next is the display cable. That's this one. we'll pry from this end and disconnect it. Now I'm going to flip the logic board back over. This display cable is held on with some adhesive, so I want to carefully pry that up from the logic board. And now I should be able to remove the old display from the iPod. Now I'm going to place the new display on the iPod. You may want to pre-bend these cables like the old one to make it easier to start assembly. I'm going to start by reconnecting the display cable. Place it over the connector and press it in place until you hear it snap. Next I'm going to reconnect the digitizer. Do the same thing. Locate it over the connector and press it in place until you hear it snap. If your rear-facing camera cable happened to become disconnected, just reconnect it. You may have to lift up on the case slightly to get the wire into place and then press it down until it snaps. I'm going to flip the logic board and battery assembly back into place. You may have to lift up slightly on the speaker, headphone jack, and lightning connector to slide them into the case and then press them down. And I'm going to replace the two screws that hold the lightning connector in place. Next, there are three screws that hold the headphone jack and speaker in place. Next, I'm going to put the front-facing camera back in place. And then I will flip the battery over and put it back in place. Next, I'm going to replace the three screws that hold the logic board in place. Next I'm going to replace this plate. Remember to put the cable for the home button through this little slot first. I'm going to replace this 2.3 millimeter screw first. And then there will be 9 1.6 millimeter screws. And then press the home button switch back into place. Now I'm going to take the home button and put it into the new screen. Before I press the new display into the iPod, I want to test it to make sure everything's connected. So I'm just going to turn it on. Now that I know that the screen is working, I'm going to insert the top of the screen first, and that would be by your on button here. Insert that in, and then go to your home button and carefully press that side of the screen into place. Till you feel it snap, and then go around the sides and press them into place.